welcome to the Dr. 305 show with yours truly, Dr. 305 himself. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about what are medical gloves. We're going to talk about what are medical gloves, when do we use medical gloves, and what are some tips to know before using medical gloves, as well as showing you how to properly wear your gloves and properly take off your gloves. And last but not least, we'll talk about how to properly dispose of your gloves so that we don't litter them in the streets and whatnot. On our previous two episodes, we talked about what an N95 mask was, which protected both your nasal and your mouth mucosal surfaces. We talked about what safety glasses are, which protects your third mucosal surface, which is your eyes or your conjunctivae. On this episode, we'll be talking about how to protect your hands and how to prevent touching or transmitting contaminated surfaces with the COVID-19 virus to yourself or your items and personal belongings and whatnot, and to prevent from transmitting the virus not only to yourself, but to your home, your friends, your family, and loved ones. So let's begin by talking about what are medical gloves. So medical gloves are examples of what we call personal protective equipment, or PPE for short, that are used to protect the wearer and or the patient from the spread of an infection or illness during a medical procedure or examination. Now, medical gloves are one part of an infection control strategy, okay? So for this instance, the second way of transmitting the COVID-19 virus is through contaminated surfaces. What is that? A contaminated surface means a surface with the COVID-19 virus that is living on that surface for whatever amount of time, depending on the surface that it may be. So by touching that surface and then touching one of your three mucosal surfaces, that's the second way of transmitting the virus to yourself to get infected with the COVID-19 virus. Now let's talk about when do we use medical gloves. Use medical gloves when your hands may touch someone else's bodily fluids, such as blood, respiratory secretions, vomiting, urine, or feces. Also certain hazardous drugs, as well as potentially contaminated items, or for this instance, contaminated surfaces. So the gloves protect us from those contaminated surfaces and from transmitting to ourselves. Now, what are some tips to know before using medical gloves? And these are very important, key to success now. Now, wash your hands before putting on sterile gloves always for 20 seconds with soap and water. If you don't have soap and water, use some hand sanitizer, which will clean your hands and to have them sanitized to wear your gloves. Make sure your gloves fit properly for you to wear them comfortably during all patient care activities or when you go about with your daily life activities. Some people are allergic to the natural rubber latex used in some medical gloves. The FDA, which is a primary resource to look into, requires manufacturers to identify on the package labeling the materials used to make the gloves. If you or someone you know is allergic to natural rubber latex, you should choose gloves made from other synthetic materials such as polyvinyl chloride, nitrile, or polyurethane. Now, be aware that sharp objects can puncture your medical gloves and rip them open. Always change your gloves if they rip or tear, and place new gloves afterwards. After removing your gloves, wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water for 20 seconds or alcohol-based hand rub, aka hand sanitizer. Never reuse your medical gloves. Never wash or disinfect medical gloves. And lastly, never share your medical gloves with other users. Now, these are very important tips to use, to know, to understand about medical gloves in general. Now, let's talk about the proper way of how to wear a medical glove. So these are an example of what medical gloves are. There's a variety of forms. Now, with the medical gloves, the right glove goes into the right hand, very simple and easy. And the left glove should go into the left hand, very simple and easily. And once you place your gloves, they should look like this. They're covering all your fingers, your nail beds, your palms, in the front and in the back as well. And that's how you properly wear your medical gloves. Now, when you go to do your shopping at the grocery store, go to your stuff at the local pharmacy or get gas, when you're in your car, you're gonna make sure your hands are washed with soap and water. If not, you have your hand sanitizer. After that, you're gonna put your gloves on and you're gonna leave your items in your car because you don't wanna second nature touch your items or your personal belongings while you're shopping. Now, when you go to the store or whatever you're doing and you're touching things, make sure you have a list ready of what you want to buy so you know you're limited in the amount of touching you're doing on the items that's out there because you do not know if they're contaminated surfaces or not. So when you're touching the items, always avoid touching your face, your eyes, your nose, or your mouth. Also, do not touch your safety glasses or your N95 mask or whatever mask you're wearing. Avoid touching any part of your face with your gloves. Avoid touching any of your electronic devices or personal items with your gloves while you're shopping. After you do your shopping and everything, you get in your car, what I recommend doing is wash your gloves with hand sanitizer or hand wipes to disinfect them and then take them off and place them in a bag in your car. That's the proper way of how to take them off. Now, how do you take off your gloves? Very simple. You get the corner here on the side. You're going to pull up like that. Make them inward out. That's one. And the same thing here too. Inward out. Because you avoid touching what you touch, right? Once you have these inward out, you can place them in your bag and ready for disposal. Now, how do you dispose your gloves? You dispose them in your local recycling bin. Do not throw them in the street, the park, the grass, whatever, because we don't want our children touching these type of items, and who knows if they're still infected with the COVID-19 virus on the glove surfaces, right? So let's dispose of them in our local recycling bins or local garbage bins if you may. Now that's the proper way of how to wear your gloves and how to take off your gloves and how to properly dispose them. Now, in a recap of today's episode, we talked about what are medical gloves. We talked about when do we use our medical gloves. We talked about tips to know before using our medical gloves. And we did a detailed description of how to wear your medical gloves, how to take them off, how to dispose of them, and the to do and not to do with your medical gloves. I hope this episode was insightful and brought knowledge about how to wear medical gloves. Always contact or locate or research on your primary resources, which are the CDC, the NIH, and the FDA websites. Those should be your primary resources with all the information you may need regarding your PPE, personal protective equipment such as masks, safety glasses, and medical gloves. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, you could always DM me on Instagram at dr.305MIA. I look forward to hearing from every one of you about any topics or discussions you may have. Tune in next week for our next episode. And I can't wait to spread more knowledge and education about the medical field and the health field to each and every one of you. I hope all of you have a blessed day. Stay safe with your safety precautions and whatnot. Till next time, Dr. 305, I'm out of here. Let's go.